You know, every single day we're just swimming in this sea of information. Headlines, feeds, reports.
Yeah.
It feels, well, almost impossible sometimes to connect the dots, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever stopped to think how things that seem totally separate, like um, new trade policies over here, AI breakthroughs over there, big social shifts happening, might actually be, linked?
Deeply linked, often.
Exactly. So today, that's what we're doing. We're taking a real deep dive. We've gathered a whole stack of recent analyses, reports, you name it, and we're going to try and unpack what's happening with the global economy right now. The super fast changes in tech and investment, and also some of these big societal impacts we're seeing.
Yeah, and our mission really is to just cut through all that noise. We want to pull out the key bits of knowledge from all these different sources. The goal isn't just to tell you what's happening, but hopefully help you understand why it matters to you, to the bigger picture. We're looking for those aha moments.
Right. That feeling of actually being informed, but without your head exploding from overload.
Exactly. Let's try and find those connections.
Okay, let's get into it. First big theme. This really dynamic, sometimes quite tricky world of global trade and, well, how major economies are doing. The sources we have here paint a pretty complex picture.
Mm-hmm. Definitely not straightforward.
So first up, there's this significant geopolitical tension. We're talking about the potential for what Donald Trump has threatened as a 2-decade policy of tariffs. The sources flag these proposed 50% tariffs on Chinese goods and even a potential 25% on Europe and South Korea. And we saw ripples immediately, right? Copper prices spiked after those threats came out July 9th.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then, boom, dropped significantly by the 11th. So what does all this talk, this protectionist threat, really mean for, global stability?
Well, if you look at the bigger picture, these kinds of tariff threats, they're not just, isolated comments. They signal a potential major reshaping of how countries trade and interact economically. Our sources suggest this could pretty quickly hit consumption, retail sales, ultimately leading to higher prices for consumers, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it just injects a huge amount of uncertainty for businesses trying to plan anything across borders. It shows how fast political words can hit real markets.
And it's not just these external pressures like tariffs, is it? We're also seeing how internal issues within big economies are causing their own problems.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at China. The sources we've got point to this, pretty worrying rise in household debt. It's up 6.4% year on year in Q1.
Wow.
Yeah. And get this, maybe 1 in 5 households could be at risk of default.
It's
That is staggering.
Plus, there's this ongoing issue of hidden debts, with local governments basically borrowing off the books, making it hard to see the real financial health. Beijing's apparently struggling to balance the books, and there are reports of 13 out of 25 provinces misusing state land.
Mm-hmm.
So what's interesting is how these internal problems might actually affect how China deals with trade disputes. Right, and it's so crucial to look past just the headline numbers with China's economy, these really deep concerns about household debt, local government finances. It highlights a totally different kind of challenge for Beijing. It's maybe less about fighting external trade wars and more about fundamental structural stability at home.
Oh.
And these internal pressures, especially needing to keep things stable socially and keep growth going for their own people, that absolutely influences their global trade stance. It could make them, more aggressive in finding export markets, or maybe more resistant to outside pressure because they have to solve these big domestic economic problems first.
Okay, now let's swing over to the UK. Our sources use some pretty provocative language, calling it Poundland or Bargain Britain.
Yeah, quite the terms.
And here's what's really striking. Even though public debt is super high, the highest since the 1960s, apparently UK assets are seen as, quote, cheap and cheerful for foreign investors. House prices are relatively low. Rental yields look good for property investors. So the big question is this a golden opportunity, or is it actually a warning sign about the UK economy itself?
Yeah, this whole Bargain Britain thing, it really does reflect those wider economic forces. Currency swings, low valuations, they can create attractive entry points for investors, absolutely. But
Yeah.
It often feels like a classic case of cheap for a reason, doesn't it? It also points to those underlying issues, stubborn inflation, big challenges for public finances, and especially, as the sources note, that growing deficit in pension pots, both public and private. We're talking about the money set aside for future retirements being significantly short.
How short?
Well, in the last fiscal year, that gap was apparently 5% of GDP. That's substantial. So it really shows how domestic policy and problems link up with global investment appetite. Sometimes the bargain price signals deeper issues under the surface.
Right, right. Okay, speaking of big economic shifts, let's talk about one of the hottest topics right now. Artificial intelligence, AI.
Can't avoid it.
It feels like everyone's talking about it,
Right.
and our sources definitely show why. The amount of investment pouring into this space is just massive. Take Nvidia. Its valuation shot up to $4 trillion.
Yeah.
$4 trillion, mostly because they dominate the AI chip market.
Incredible numbers.
And then there's this company, CoreWeave. They do AI cloud computing. They got a $9 billion deal from Nvidia for GPUs, right? And their monthly revenue reportedly jumped from 300% growth to something like 2,000%.
Whoa.
So what does this incredibly focused surge of money mean for tech, for investment generally?
Well, what's really fascinating and maybe a bit concerning is how resilient AI investment is compared to everything else. Like you said, overall venture capital funding, it's actually down across most other sectors in 2025. But AI just keeps pulling in these huge blockbuster deals.
Well, boom or bubble.
That's the $1 million or maybe $1 trillion question, isn't it? The sources suggest that while the numbers look like a boom, the fact that it's so concentrated mainly in chips and foundational tech while the rest of the VC world is pulling back, it suggests something maybe quite focused, possibly fragile.
Like a sprint, not a marathon.
Exactly. Less a broad market boom, maybe more targeted, perhaps even speculative AI sprint, driven by this intense race for the core technology.
But it's not just about the investment figures, is it? AI is already changing how we actually work.
For sure.
Our sources mentioned this study on work-life balance. And kind of surprisingly, it found that putting AI into companies can sometimes lead to worse work-life scores.
Really? Worse?
Yeah, especially it seems in companies that already have, quote, toxic cultures, or maybe use those full-time hybrid models without managing them well. So just plugging in AI doesn't automatically mean happier employees.
Yeah, and that really underscores a key point, doesn't it? Technology, no matter how powerful, it's still just a tool. Its impact gets shaped massively by the human context, the company culture, how it's managed.
Right.
AIs isn't inherently good or bad for your work-life balance, but in a toxic place or a poorly run hybrid setup, it can actually make things worse. Maybe by enabling more monitoring, blurring those work-home lines even further, increasing the pressure to be always on. So it raises that big question. How do we make sure AI actually improves our lives, not just squeeze more productivity out of us at the expense of our well-being? It's not just what AI does, but the how and the why of using it.
That really leads nicely into this broader discussion we found in the sources about investment philosophy, this idea of the rearview mirror versus a forward-looking approach.
Ah, yes, that distinction.
So some investors, they really lean heavily on historical data, things like PE ratios,
Yeah.
Price to earnings based on past performance.
The traditional metrics.
Exactly. But that approach, it might mean missing out on future growth areas, like AI potentially. Then you have others who focus more on growth potential, intangible assets, stuff like brand value, IP, and network effects, things that don't always show up neatly on a balance sheet.
Right.
What strikes you about these different ways of thinking in today's market?
Oh, I think that distinction is absolutely crucial right now, especially with how fast things are changing. Relying only on the past, that rearview mirror view, as the sources call it, well, it can definitely lead you to misjudge companies in these new super high growth areas.
Because the past doesn't predict the future anymore.
Not reliably, no, not in these transformative sectors. It's about recognizing that while traditional metrics have their place, they might not capture the full picture, the disruptive potential, the real value of those intangibles. It forces you to ask, am I investing based on what used to work or what could work next? It's a challenge for investors to really rethink how value gets created in this, digital AI-driven age.
Okay, let's shift gears again, moving towards some really profound societal challenges. They might seem separate from tech and trade, but as we're seeing, they're often deeply connected. One source takes a really hard look at the global asylum system. The conclusion: it's basically broken.
Yeah, that's a stark assessment.
The numbers alone are pretty staggering.
Yeah.
1.2 million asylum claims globally in 2023. And what's really concerning is the processing time. In the EU, the average wait is over 300 days.
Over 300 days. just waiting.
Yeah. It just raises huge questions about the human cost, obviously, but also the immense strain this puts on countries' resources.
Absolutely. And, the framework is there. The UN Refugee Convention, signed by 120 countries, aims to provide protection. But the sheer scale of movement today, the complexity of managing everything from the legal side to housing, social services, it just highlights this urgent need for a more, I don't know, coherent, humane, global approach.
And different countries are trying different things, right?
Exactly. The sources mention varied approaches. You see reports about the UK attempting things like deportation to third countries, while across Europe, responses really differ, some more open, some much stricter on border controls. Understanding those different strategies is, I think, key to grasping just how complex this global challenge really is.
Okay, so from these huge global issues, let's bring it right down to something very personal but also widely relevant: mental health.
Okay.
Our sources highlighted some really fascinating new research. It's about how hormones, specifically testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, have a profound influence on mood, anxiety, depression.
Ah, the hormone connection.
Yeah. And here's a surprising fact from this research. Potentially, a significant chunk of mental health issues could actually be linked to these hormonal imbalances, which suggests, totally new ways to diagnose and maybe even treat these conditions beyond just the traditional psychiatric routes.
Yeah, that research is genuinely challenging some long-held views about mental health, isn't it? It suggests we need a much more holistic approach, one that brings in endocrinology, the study of hormones.
Right.
And in this age of, let's face it, information overload, global anxieties, it raises a really important question. As we're dealing with all these modern stressors, how can we better understand the biological side of our well-being? Maybe find more targeted, more effective ways to help people.
It's a connection most people probably don't make automatically when they think mental health.
Probably not, no.
Yeah.
But it's a surprising link that could potentially unlock real progress.
So wrapping this all up, what does it all mean for you listening? We've bounced from, tense trade talks and tariffs to the AI gold rush, different ways of investing, the huge pressures on the asylum system, and even down to hormones and mental health. The thread, the powerful thing connecting all these seemingly different topics, is just how incredibly fast our world is changing, and the complex ways economic, technological, and social forces are all interacting, often unpredictably.
Exactly. These issues, as diverse as they seem, they all reflect the sort of pressures and transformations happening right now. Understanding them really does mean pulling back a bit, trying to see those underlying patterns, and recognizing just how interconnected everything is. It really encourages that critical thinking, doesn't it? About how these big global shifts eventually ripple down and actually impact individual lives, our communities, often in ways we don't see coming.
So today, we took that deep dive into this huge ocean of information. Hopefully, we pulled out some critical insights on those global economic shifts, the booming AI scene, and those profound societal and personal impacts of this rapidly changing world.
Yeah, we really hope this helps you feel a bit more informed, maybe better equipped, just to navigate the sheer complexity of our times.
And as you think about everything we've talked through today, here's maybe one final thought for you to mull over. In a world where global trade, super fast tech advances, and these immense societal pressures are constantly reshaping our lives, how can proactively understanding these connections, these forces, empower you? Not just to react to all the change, but maybe to actively shape your own future and perhaps the future of your community too.